How y'all doing? It's Jared. This is a cheap Chinese balisong that I just picked up. And it came out of the box relatively funny. Here's the disclaimer, because I did reassemble one of these handles because it fell apart out of the box. It literally fell apart just from me flipping it. Just the pivot fell out. The pivot fell out, and I actually did just press in this tang pin as well. But one of the things that I'm not quite sure about with this knife is, why did it come with an extra blade? Okay, why did it come with an extra blade? Why does it say quality on the package? And why does it have 5 washers on each pivot? There are 5 washers on each pivot, 2 on one side and 3 on the other. I don't understand this. And you can see what it does here is it actually causes the frame here, the scales themselves to swell. They force up and bring apart to actually fit those washers in there, to fit those 5 washers. And so it's not to make it level, it's not to even it out, because it actually does the opposite. It destroys it being level. I don't understand why they did this. I mean, that might have been a mistake. Maybe they didn't actually mean to do that. I have no idea. But what I'm going to do is strip this thing apart and pull out some of those washers, because I'm pretty sure that I can actually remove these washers and level this frame back out, it might have a much better chance of actually being able to flip and actually being able to move through the air. So pull these little screws out, and I've got a whole bunch of screws already in my dish, so I'm just gonna leave that pin in there. So washers, there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Where's the 10th? There's 10. 10. 10 washers for one balisong. And now what I'm going to do is clean out all of these pieces. You can see the amount of grease and just oil that is all over these pivots. This pivot in particular is actually full of grease. It's full of oil. I don't know if that's going to come across. So what I'm going to do is wipe all these things down, get everything just clean to the point where I think it's a little bit better. Remove most of this oil, and then I'll actually Loctite the pivots when I come back. See, I'm just giving these washers a really simple wipe down with a paper towel, clean them off. They're just like a clear acrylic plastic material. It's got them cleaned out. Now I'm going to wipe down my pivots here. And what I'm going to do to clean this pivot out, right? Take my paper towel and twist it up. Get a really nice little needle like point on there. And so that way I can actually thread this into the pivot. And then I'll go with the direction of the threads and legitimately thread this paper towel into that pivot. I can feel it grabbing, pulling more paper towel down on the inside. Pull it out. See how much oil and gunk and grease and crap I'm pulling out of this pivot. So I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do this until there's no residue left on the paper towel. And that way I know that there's no residue, well, as little as possible residue left in the actual pivot itself. So screw it on there, pull it out. Hit up this other one. I twisted this handle, right? This pin, the latch, was held in by just this little pin going in between the two scales themselves. You can see that little recessed hole actually in there. And so I twisted it, right, to clean out the paper towel. And this pin fell out. So what I'm going to do is, I don't know if this is going to work, but if it does, it's going to be basically a perfect demonstration of the lack of tolerances. You hear me mention tolerances all the time, and something like this should not be able to happen. This is probably going to be hard to do on camera, but let's see if I can do it. What I'm going to do is just put this pin in here, stick it in the hole, tilt this thing at an angle, right? Let's get it in there like that. Line up my hole and almost. It's in. I should never be able to reassemble a latch like that. I mean, that's not a horrible latch. That's a decent piece of steel right there. And it's been machined, That's a decent piece of steel. It's not like it's a cast piece, that's decent itself, but I should never have been able to reassemble it like that. So now what I'm gonna do is just stick. It's gonna fall out. No, stay in there. I'm gonna take my pivot, put my pivots back in. My latch fell back out. I'll throw that thing back in there in a second. So I got both these pivots in, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use 3 washers because I do think it needs a little bit more space than the just 2 would provide. So I'm gonna stick 2 washers on each pivot. There's 2 washers there. Make sure I got 1. 2 washers on each pivot. I'll take my blade, make sure my blade is orientated correctly with the cutting edge going towards what will be the bite handle. I'm going to move this over this way. Set that on there. Take another washer. Set it on. Line all that up. You see that frame there? Yeah, see that's a lot more straight. So there's not going to be any undue pressures up in the pivot area because these scales aren't being forced apart. They're not trying to squeeze open to compensate for the separation of those washers. So now it's a lot more flat. There should be less resistance in it. I think that this will probably work a little bit better. I'm going to stick my screw in here right now just to hold it in. So I'm not actually going to be fully assembling it. I want to Loctite these screws before I do that. Let's take the handle, second handle, throw her on. Get my little washer. Tighten it down. Give these a little bit of a tighten here. Take them all the way down. That's tight. That's tight. Back it up. And back it out. It's still not great. But it's better. It's a little bit better, and it's sitting much more flush, much more even. There are still 3 washers in each one, but the handles don't collapse in nearly as easy. The latch still does work in the open position, closed position as well. So, yeah, that's a major improvement on this thing. It needed it. I can't say, that this thing isn't worth the money because I paid like $10 for this thing and I paid like $15 for this thing. And for that, honestly, I'm not going to say that I'm not getting my money's worth for $15 because I am. There's a lot of material here. There's a lot of metal here. There's a lot of work that has gone into making this. So for $15, I can't complain, but I shouldn't ever have to take out 4 washers and do that kind of maintenance on a knife just to make it functional. And so for $15, no, I do not feel like I'm getting ripped off, but $15 I don't think is an acceptable amount of money to spend on a balisong. If you're going to buy a balisong, spend more than the $15, but if you are going to spend $15, you don't have to get ripped off. Some of them aren't bad. This one especially. That's it. Y'all have a good one.